Now, I don't know if any of you know anything about what's called piecework. And what it was is, if a man had to make, say, 10 big rivets of something, and a man would be given the time to make those 10, and they would be what they called a batch. Now, if he made it more quickly than the time that was set, he would get paid extra for the time that he had gained. Well, of course, this was a great thing in the works, because some of the men who were doing very repetitive work could always beat, they used to call it beat the time. And they were very dismayed one day when the factory, which was very go ahead, employed a time and motion study expert who came down. And he was dressed, I think it's something like the Fat Controller in the Thomas the Tank film. They thought this was hilarious because they were all covered in oil and compound from the machines and, you know, just general dirty workplace. And he came in dressed so immaculately to set these times. And there was one man who was always, he could always beat the time on anything that he was going to make. And this gentleman, because he looked like a gentleman, came and put all these times on, and this man said, "You can't do it in that time." He said, you know, he inferred that this man actually could do it in his head, but he couldn't actually physically do it. And this gentleman, I'm telling now that several men told me the same story. He loosened his tie, took off his immaculate black coat, laid it to the side, and did a batch in the time that he'd specified. So, of course, there was nothing to say, and there was a great sensation. It all went through the works very quickly that don't mess with this man. In those days, there were halfpennies were in circulation in the shops, and things were priced in halfpennies. But for the sake of operation and the amount of money that had to be put in the packs, the halfpennies were quite big. They were bigger than a 10-penny piece. The factory used to run on the system of 1 week they'd give a man, if a halfpenny was concerned in his pay, they would say, well, everybody this week, if it's a halfpenny, we'll give them the next penny up. And then the next week they would say, well, anyone who's got a halfpenny, they'll have the next penny down. Well, there was one, we used to call them barrack room lawyers, who worked there, and he came up one day and he said, I think that the firm is taking money off us by doing this. Well, my boss was quite incensed about this, so he got all the cards down, which was a considerable amount of cards, from the top of the cabinet, or got people to do it, counted it all out. I reckoned it up, and in the end, the man owed us money. And that really went down in the annals as a sort of thing like, don't buck the system.